Let me just say straight away that I don't mean weird things in an unkind or critical way. I just mean things that are unusual or different. Hi, I'm Dara, and I created this channel for Brits and Anglophiles around the world to gather and discuss British stuff. If you want to become part of the Magenta Otter tribe, all you gotta do is subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell button so that you can be alerted every time a new video comes out. My two most recent videos are about weird British foods, both the ones that I recommend and the ones that I don't recommend. So now I'm going to talk about other weird British things that are not food. They might be things, they might be ways of doing things or habits or customs, things that are just different in Britain than they are in the US. This video will cover the ones that I think are different in a good way, and next Friday will be things that I don't necessarily think are better than the American way. So here are some unusual British things that I recommend trying. This might sound like kind of a weird place to start, but I would like to mention a couple medications, specifically paracetamol and arnica. These are things that I don't really see or hear about in the US, but they're really common in Britain. And so I just wanted to give a little info about that. Paracetamol, this is the Boots store brand version, is just like acetaminophen or Tylenol in the US, except it is a different drug. But it's similar in that it helps with pain relief, but it's not an anti-inflammatory like Advil or aspirin. So it's very common headache remedy and other pain remedy in the UK. And a little box like this you can pick up for like less than $1, especially if you get store brand. So that's good to know for traveling aches and pains. And then I wanted to talk about arnica. This is actually a homeopathic remedy. And in general, in Britain, they embrace homeopathy a lot more than they do here in the US. Certainly a lot of people in America practice homeopathic medicine. I just feel like it's more widely embraced in Britain. And in fact, a lot of medical doctors will kind of have a merger of both Western medicine and homeopathic remedies when they recommend treatments to you. So arnica, yes, it also comes in like the little homeopathic pill form that people take, but this is a gel. And arnica is used for when you get a bump or a scrape or something that might bruise, and I bruise kind of easily. But I'm also a klutz and I'm always bumping into things. And so when I bump into something and I know that's gonna bruise, I'll put some arnica on it. And this stuff actually, I don't completely believe in all the homeopathy stuff, but this stuff actually kind of works. So you might want to give it a try. Have you watched any British TV shows? Have you watched any British movies? If so, when someone comes home with bad news or reveals some difficult challenge that they're facing in their life, what does their friend or family member say? I'm gonna go put the kettle on. Yeah, it's a thing. It happens all the time. And honestly, I kind of love that. I love the fact that putting the kettle on means I'm gonna go make us a cup of tea, and that cup of tea is gonna help you figure out how to move forward in your life facing this trauma or this problem you have to solve. And these days, putting the kettle on means flipping a switch on an electric kettle like this, because this is what is in every British home, an electric kettle. And I'm not gonna spend time in this video telling you about why you really need an electric kettle in your house. I did a whole video about how to make a proper cup of tea and give you all kinds of information about electric kettles. So if you're American and have not embraced this, you need to watch the other video. Or you need to just believe me and get an electric kettle. I will post a link below to my favorite tea kettle on Amazon.com as well as Amazon.co.uk. Even though we live in North Texas and it's hot as Hades for a large part of the year, we do love a good cup of herbal tea is what we drink. And in the wintertime, pretty much every single evening we will have a cup of herbal tea, and it's a great way to unwind at the end of the day, maybe a cup of chamomile before going to bed. And so definitely embrace the putting the kettle on tradition. Okay, since tea is such a big part of British culture, there's more tea stuff I gotta talk about. I need to talk to you about tea towels and tea cozies. So I'm a little obsessed with tea towels. In fact, I'm thinking about doing a whole separate video about tea towels. Let me know in the comments if anyone's interested in that, because I definitely could talk about it for 5 minutes in a video. So I won't go into all the ways that you should use tea towels in this video because that would take up too much time, but I will just share a couple examples of tea towels I love. These are some tea towels that I use all the time for washing dishes, and this one gives favorite Yorkshire recipes from Victorian times. They're very funny to read. And yes, there's a recipe for Yorkshire pudding. And then this is my Scottish recipes tea towel that I bought in Scotland. And yes, there's a recipe for haggis. And no, I have not tried making it. The second thing I'll mention is a tea cozy. If you are making proper English tea, which to be honest, I don't, I use the tea kettle and brew it in a mug. But if you're doing it the proper way and you're using loose tea and you're putting it in a ceramic teapot to steep so you can have several cups of tea at once, you need a tea cozy. Now, I did have a teapot, but a few years ago, I went through the extreme downsizing of 2017, where I moved from a big house to a small house, and I got rid of most of the stuff I owned, and the ceramic teapot went with it. But if you are going to make larger quantities of tea and steep it in a ceramic teapot, a tea cozy is a great idea because it's a cute little knitted sweater to keep the teapot warm and therefore your tea warm while you have cup after cup. Now I'm going to show you two things which you are going to find in a typical British household, but not a typical American household. Egg cups for sure, and probably egg spoons. And okay, I know some American households might have these, especially if they're posh or in the Northeast where there's a lot more British influence, New England area and whatnot. But down here in Texas, I think I'm the only kid in the block that has these in their house. And egg cups are great for soft-boiled eggs, and these wee little spoons are great for eating them. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to eat soft-boiled eggs with toast soldiers. This is a big thing in Britain. And you need to have a demonstration by my cute husband, Ian. So watch this video to get the scoop. If you're not familiar with an egg spoon, it is a wee little spoon. So here's a regular small teaspoon. You can see by comparison that egg spoon is tiny. And we use this nifty little contraption to put inside the water when you boil it so that you know when the egg is soft boiled. You just drop that little egg timer in the water along with your eggs, and it will let you know when your egg is soft cooked. You can see from the black rim that the eggs are ready to take out. And then we get some toast, spread some butter on it, and this is the all-important step. We turn the toast into soldiers. Ian's going to show you how it's all done.
So you have to carefully behead the egg. You got to get just above the yolk line so you don't have yolk all over the place. And then
you take your wee little egg spoon. Now he's getting some pepper and salt for his egg, of course, from the Hedgehog salt and pepper shakers. And the little egg spoon is good for getting the little top off the egg.
delicious.
Here's another soldier going in, head first. The next thing I'm going to mention is something that I don't think is unique just to Britain. I think other parts of Europe use these as well, but little individual ceramic butter dishes. I saw these at a B&B in Tavistock, England, and I just thought it was the cutest thing ever, and I had to go onto Amazon.co.uk and order some for my flat so I could have my very own. I think these are just so adorable to have when you're sitting at the table and want to butter your food. I will include a link below to where you can buy these cute little dishes. Okay, we're gonna talk about the word sorry and the word cheers. Now, in the US, Canadians are famously teased for apologizing a lot, but it's also a very British thing. British people do apologize all the time for things like bumping into a table and saying I'm sorry to the table. And I think it's nice. I think it's very polite. And as an excessive apologizer myself, I embrace this. But let's talk about the quintessentially British word of cheers. Yes, here in the States, we might say cheers if we're toasting someone, but in Britain, it is a very common word that means more than one thing. It can mean goodbye, it can mean thanks, it can even mean hi, but it is a very, very common way to end a conversation, whether you're sending a text or a letter or you're leaving a shop. To say cheers is just a really friendly way to end an interaction or communication with someone. What goes along with that is ending a written communication with the letter X. So growing up here in the States, I learned that X's and O's were like hugs and kisses, and you might use those if you're writing a letter to a loved one. You might send a birthday card to your grandma and put X's and O's at the end. But in Britain, it's really common to, even just in a text message or a WhatsApp message, to end with an X or two or maybe three. Although if you're British, please know that for Americans, triple X means something that you don't want to imply. So I'd say stick to 1X or 2X. But this is super, super common. It's a friendly way to end a message to someone. Okay, this is a little bit controversial, but the whole date writing thing is a big deal. Because in the US, when we write the date numerically, we always put the month first, and then the day, and then the year. And this is so confusing when you're filling out forms and you're from the US and you're anywhere else in the world, pretty much. This is not just a British thing. Because everybody else puts the day first, and then the month, and then the year. And honestly, I can see both advantages. I'm really good at rationalizing things, so in terms of writing the three numbers, I can see why sometimes it's helpful to put the date first, and it would also be helpful to put the month first. But when you're writing it out in text and numbers, I do have a strong opinion on this. When I started doing family history research, I was taught to write the date format this way, with the day, the month, and then the year. And I really like that because the American way of putting the month and then the day and the year together is like a lot of numbers together that you separate with a comma. And it's just so much easier for me and more clear to just put the date, the month, and the year. So I've started doing that, and people think I'm weird. Okay, lastly, I gotta talk about roundabouts, or as they're called here in the States, traffic circles. Now, yes, we do have roundabouts in the United States of America. They're probably a lot more common in the Northeast, but even here in the North Texas suburbs, traffic circles have started popping up here and there. And they are really an efficient way to keep traffic moving without stopping at stoplights. But here's the problem. If you're like me and you're really, really used to traveling around roundabouts in Britain, where they drive on the left side of the road, and then a traffic circle pops up in your hometown and you have to drive on the right side of the road, this can be a problem. So when my friend Susan was in a new subdivision and I went to visit her and was driving home and didn't know that there was a traffic circle there, I'm like, oh, so I start driving around the traffic circle to the left. The oncoming motorist was very confused what to do with me. Thankfully, I averted a collision, so all's well that ends well, but I've now learned I have to be really careful and think very carefully when approaching a traffic circle in the US and not just do what comes naturally. I don't want to take sides on sides of the road, so I'm not going to say driving on the left is better than driving on the right. I think they're both fine. It's kind of a pain that we do it differently because you do have to be so careful when you're an American and you go to Britain and you try driving, because you have to think about it all the time. That concludes my list of different things that I think are different in a good way. Please let me know your thoughts, whether you're British or American, whether you agree or disagree. Let me know what you think. And were any of these things surprising to you? In conclusion, I'd like to give a plug for my Britain Love Stories series. If you're curious about why did I end up being such a super Anglophile, or what's so cool about Britain anyway, please check out my series of 10 videos that talk about all the things I love about Britain. As always, thanks so much for watching, and do something good in the world today.